In this video, I would like to take a look at North Korea's surprising Christian heritage and destiny. We hear a lot about North Korea in the news, we hear about its nuclear threats, we hear about the tyrannical regime of Kim Jong-il and Kim Il-sung and the Kim dynasty. But many would be surprised to know that North Korea has a tremendous Christian heritage. And not only that, but the Kim dynasty itself comes from a strong Christian family. Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea, today known as the center from which this family rules, was once the capital and the center of revivals that spread out all across Korea. There was a Protestant mission opened here in 1895, and there were wave after wave of people becoming believers. And it culminated in the Great Revival in 1907, called the Pyongyang Revival. This spread out from Pyongyang and touched the surrounding area and the whole nation of Korea. And the fruit of it was long-lasting. By 1910, there were 60,000 believers in Pyongyang in the Presbyterian Church alone. By 1948, there were 2,000 churches throughout Korea, and they were predominantly located in the north. Postcards from the time showed pictures of evangelists reaching out and sharing the gospel on the streets, instead of the traditional pictures of scenic areas and North Korean culture. The evangelism was so prevalent that it became featured on postcards from the time. So God did something amazing in Pyongyang and in North Korea at that time. But what went wrong? Let's have a look at the Kim family dynasty. Because the thing is, not only did Christianity impact Korea, but also the Kim family was deeply impacted by the waves of revival in the area. This is a picture of Kim Il-sung's father, Kim Hong-yik, an elder in the Presbyterian Church. And his grandfather, so Kim Il-sung's grandfather, was a minister. Kim Il-sung is known as the founder of North Korea, but he, when he was a young child, was an accomplished organist playing in the church for his father and grandfather. How did young Kim turn so radically against the Christian faith of his parents? He was raised in church. What happened? Well, here he is as a rebel leader, and as a young man, he took note of how the Western missionaries in Korea lived a decadent lifestyle, while he noticed that the Koreans were struggling to barely put food on the table. In addition, there was a sad episode in his life when his family were forced to flee Korea because of the Japanese authorities. And while they were seeking refuge in China, one day his father was kidnapped by the Japanese soldiers, and the local Christians, they gathered around and they prayed fervently. But Kim's father never returned. Perhaps this was what scarred young Kim, and he turned away with resentment away from Christianity. He was influenced by communist ideals and became a rebel leader fighting against the Japanese, and was later installed by the Russians as the head of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Pyongyang's status as the Jerusalem of the East, as it was called because of all the Christian work going on there, came to an end in 1948 with the rapid closure of churches, confiscation of church properties under Kim Il-sung. It's horrible to see how this young man turned away from his Christian heritage and became a ruthless persecutor of the faith of his forefathers. Today his son and his grandson are following in the same footsteps, and millions of Koreans are suffering from Kim's fateful decision to turn away from the God of his fathers. In North Korea, it's interesting to observe that Christian discipleship principles seem to be at work in the running of the nation. In Christian circles, Bible study groups, worship songs, confession of sins are all important to develop strong, committed disciples. And even though Kim turned his back on Christianity, it seems that his regime deliberately chose to employ some of these methods in building up and strengthening their leadership of the nation. Today at work in Korea, there'll be regular breaks to study the writings of Kim Il-sung. There'll be the singing of songs to the dear leader, and even the confession of sins in weekly confessionals. Maybe these corrupted Christian principles are the secret to North Korea's enduring dictatorship. Furthermore, Kim Il-sung is regarded as a god and his son as the Son of God. It seems to be a mirror of Christian theology. Founding father Kim Il-sung is even believed by many to be God in the flesh and the creator of the earth. The North Korean blogger Jusha Girl gives insight into a Christ-like vision of the leader. She writes, "Dear leader can make the handicapped walk and the blind to see." It sounds like a twisted version of a Sunday school song. Hope for the future of North Korea. Is there hope for the future of North Korea? Well, I've studied the story of the church in China back in the 1960s and 70s, and in many ways there are great similarities with the church in North Korea. In the 1960s and 70s there was practically worship of Chairman Mao in China, and all the young people were following him. But there was a tumultuous time, and ultimately when Mao Zedong passed away in 1976, millions of Chinese lost faith in their once great leader. They saw the devastation that he had wrought on their country. And this experience led to their many hearts becoming fertile soil for a great revival which swept across China. The Chinese church was thought close to extinct back in the 1960s and 70s due to the high level of persecution from the Chinese leadership. But those who survived and those who stood firm in the fires of persecution, they were prepared to lead the church and lead the revival that came after the death of Mao. Today there are 300,000 believers in North Korea according to Open Doors. And could the same happen in North Korea? Could the removal of the Kim dynasty and the loss of faith in this family that has caused so much damage to this nation lead the nation to become fertile soil for a great revival? And can these North Korean believers who are standing firm in the face of tremendous persecution become those who will head up the revival to come? Let us remember to pray for North Korea as we hear about them in the headlines. Not forget that God has a plan for this nation, that they have a Christian heritage, and I believe there is a destiny for this nation to turn to God. That just as China had one of the greatest revivals in the 20th century was in China, so there can be a tremendous revival now in the 21st century in North Korea. So let's pray for this people. Let's pray for revival in the midst. Let's pray for the missionaries who are working in the underground church of China, in particular working to reach out to North Korea. For those who would like more information, I recommend the book Back to the Jerusalem of the East by Eugene Bach and Luther Martin.